Wow. I couldn't believe how much more in control and um, confident is the right word, I felt when I was able to sort of really fine tune this technique and see it unfold beautifully before my eyes. Wow, I exhaled for the first time and realized there is a better way, there is another way, and why isn't this what we all do? And I just don't understand why we are all, in this mode of how we were raised. I was yelled at, I was punished, I was grounded. So as a parent, I just went back to that knee-jerk reaction of just this is what happened to me and just do it. I didn't understand that kids needed to be communicated with in a different way.
Welcome to Single Parent Success Stories, a podcast designed to inspire single parents. Here you'll find resources from self-care to finances to parenting and everything in between. Discover what it takes to thrive. Let the stories inspire you to what is possible. So many of us promise ourselves that we'll never repeat the patterns we grew up with until life becomes overwhelming and we find ourselves reacting in ways we never expected. This conversation is a reminder that awareness is where change begins and that it is never too late to become the parent, partner, or the person you truly want to be. If you're in a season of rebuilding, healing, or trying to rediscover who you are, I wrote The Gift Inside as a companion for that journey. It's a reminder that even life's hardest moments can become the beginning of something beautiful. You'll find the link in the description below. Welcome to Single Parent Success Stories. I'm so glad you are here to share both your personal journey as a parent and the wisdom you've gained helping families create more peaceful relationships with their children. So welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Thank you. If you could have other people describe you in 3 words, what would you love those 3 words to be?
Loyal, fun, and accountable.
Love that. How do these 3 words, loyal, fun, and accountable, play a key role in the core message that you have for the people?
Yeah, the loyalty part isn't necessarily part of the message necessarily for parenting, but the accountable part and the fun part is I definitely weave those words into my parenting coaching and into the messaging I have for parents to try to zoom out, look at the big picture, always, try to find the fun in parenting. And the accountability part is when we're parents, we're taught that we have to change. If we want behavior to change from our kids, we're taught we have to change the child. But in accountability, we have to look in the mirror and go, what is my part? And in my case, I had to teach that I had to stop yelling. I had to learn that if I wanted my kids to behave differently, I had to stop yelling. So the accountability part was for me, and for other parents, same message.
Awesome. Thank you. What got you started into helping people do that, into getting into the field of work that you do now?
Well, those with the most to learn have the most to teach, in my opinion. So I wasn't really about kids early on. My husband wanted a family. I ended up with triplets. So I went from 1 to 4 kids overnight, and I was yelling and overwhelmed, and I was running in my own business. And so I had so much to learn about motivating kids and understanding that they need to be treated in a different way. And it was, definitely a lot for me to learn. So I went through that whole journey and all the things that I learned when I was studying behavioral psychology and saw what worked for my kids. I want to give that back to other parents. And it's been fun for me to be able to help parents get rid of the chaos in their home and the yelling, and to be able to get kids who listen and cooperate in their homes. So that's how it's manifested in my life.
Cool, I love it. Learning from personal experience, I think, is best when you have your own kind of view from everything that stems from that. You describe yourself as a once reluctant parent and a reformed yeller. Can you
Yes.
take us back to those early parenting years? What was the biggest struggle you faced and what helped you begin changing your approach?
Well, the biggest struggle was going from 1 to 4 kids, being surprised with triplets. Did not see that coming. We weren't on fertility or anything, so it just happened quickly. And so that was really one of the first things, and just being so overwhelmed that I was napping at red lights, just so exhausted, just trying to get a breath and trying to keep life moving, running my own business, and then, the kids and learning how to get them on a schedule and just then are having our older child who was like 3 years older and he needed time with us. It was definitely very, very overwhelming in terms of parenting. So I remember those days very well of just sort of being in a fog and being so tired that I was just going through the motions. And so, yeah, I can remember those days very, very clearly. And just if I knew then what I had ahead of me, right? It's been every just one day at a time is what I had to learn to do, is to be focusing on my moment and knowing that that's the only thing I have control over, is like right here and now.
Wow. I can't imagine. I have only 2 kids. I don't know how you did it with four.
It was
That's
a
to
lot.
you. And yeah, when unexpected happens, like in your case, you didn't expect triplets all of a sudden. How do you juggle it all and keeping schedules together and making everything priority, and then also keeping yourself in line? And unbelievable. I love that you were able to kind of conquer that, and you're here with us today.
Thank you.
Parenting 4 children, including triplets, while navigating military life must have been brought unique challenges. What did that experience teach you about resilience and flexibility as a parent?
Well, we never really know what we're able to handle. I remember we do have twins in the family, and my mom always said, we have twins in the family. So when we had our first baby, I remember thinking, oh, wouldn't it have been great if he was a twin? Wouldn't that be great? And then when he came out, and it was, there's a lot of, newness and firsts with your first anyway. And I remember thinking when he was about 3 months old with my husband, I was like, thank God this wasn't twins. I would not be able to handle this. So now if I had known then that triplets were in my future, I would have probably, never had sex again. Like I just would have we don't know what we're capable of handling. And that's the beauty of life. We're given lessons, we're given a journey that we have to step up to, and we surprise ourselves with how strong we are and how resourceful we are. I read books and I had great help. My mom came to visit those first 3 months. My husband is an awesome husband and father. So I wasn't alone. I didn't do it all by myself. And I think it's important too to understand that we should never be afraid to ask for help when we're feeling overwhelmed. But yes, it was definitely, a lot, but we surprise ourselves with how strong we are when we're thrown into these situations and we have to figure out how to get through them. And I think most parents can relate to that. There's always something unexpected that we just didn't know was coming. And we were like, well, we got through it. And I think it's important to look back at those lessons and go, look, we thought this was something we couldn't overcome, but look, we're here today. And look at how we did that. So we're stronger than we think.
Totally true. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Many single parents feel like they're constantly putting out fires with their kids' behavior. What are some simple shifts parents can make to reduce conflict and create a calmer home environment?
Well, when I studied behavioral psychology and I had 4 kids under like the age of 5 and was working, everything felt overwhelming. When we're parenting, every day is new because we're facing all new situations and new things with each child at every age and phase. So we are in react mode, and we pretty much, once you start down the road of react mode, it doesn't really stop because, we're learning and everything is new, and every day feels overwhelming and new because it's like something new that we haven't discovered or we haven't experienced. As I studied everything with behavioral psychology and I raised our own, I'm a business minded person. So I run my own business. I'm very big picture. So as I got through all the phases, I started really trying to come up with structures, and I tried to take the information that I learned when I was immersing myself in the behavioral psychology side of things and learning and reading the books and getting all the terms and how did this work and how do I say this to get a different result. That felt very overwhelming at the time, but as it settled in, as I was using the techniques that I was learning, what I do now is I teach parents. I've whittled it down and boiled it down to structures and foundational techniques to help parents make their lives easier. And so what I've done is I've created structures that help parents be more in prevent mode and less in react mode. So my coaching and my workshops focus on what can we do today to look at patterns and interrupt patterns and understand what is making us yell. Where are we, where are we learning that our reactions are coming from a place of being tired or from being stressed or lack of communication on our part? So that's what I do. I create structures and help you kind of structure your communication with your child so that you're what I call kind of parenting in advance. And we learn how to back all of that up and parent from back here so that our communication and our kids get buy-in and we bake in accountability and they own their behavior. There's all sorts of ways that I teach that.
Awesome. I love that. I love that it's about preventing, because when you can, of course, you cannot predict the future, but if you have those structures in place when a situation arises, you're more prepared on how to handle it and not
Well,
turning on your reactivity mode, but pausing, slowing down before you.
when we learn about the motivations behind kids' behaviors and we understand what the needs that need to be met are, we can zoom out and understand so we can literally learn how to sidestep a power struggle. And I kind of teach that, like, we don't always have to go through the front door. And as parents, we tend to be very controlling, like do it now, because I said, and you're never, never empty the dishwasher. You don't, your room's a mess. We are in react mode. When we can sort of back that up and see things in a different perspective, we can build in the systems that then go, okay, we know we yell during this time. We know that our child is going to react. If I go and make a direct statement or make a direct request, hey, do this, do it now, I know I'm going to get a power struggle. So we don't always have to go through the front door. We can go through the side door and we can sidestep the power struggle. And if we understand behavioral psychology, we understand what the kid is thinking and feeling, and we understand things from a different perspective. We can then adopt these new techniques and these new communication styles that get us what we want, but don't have to be so overt and controlling about it. And there's a multitude of ways that, that we can do that.
I love it. Awesome. What's your number one secret to changing child's behavior?
It's really just having like training conversations. A lot of the times the parents that I mentor or that I coach, they think they have to have all the answers. We put pressure on us as parents, like we're the adult, we're the boss, we have to know all of these things. You know what? It's a collaboration. We can sit down and we can have our goals and we can express our goals to our children. Here's the boundary or here's the rule. And then I can invite my child's participation within the freedom of that boundary. So I can still get the job done that I need done. But if I communicate it up front with the child and I give them the time that they need to get it done, whether it's, I want your room picked up, but you can get it, you can decide by tomorrow at dinner time, I want it done. So now I'm respecting your time. I'm respecting that you have other things that you might want to do, play with a friend, whatever it is. I'm still getting my job done, but I'm inviting them into a partnership to say, here's what I need done and how can you help me? And it's all about the communication. It's all about having, a respectful foundation in our interaction. And it's all about, me still getting done what I need done and getting that cooperation, but I'm inviting it from my child as opposed to demanding it. And it's just interesting to see how much easier it is to get kids to do things when they think they're helping, or if I'm having my conversation up front in a training sort of way. So I would say my number one secret is just going, like, we can get the kids involved in the process. And I can give you a quick example. It's like I was working with a mom the other week and her dinner was crazy. She's got 4 kids and her kids were all over the place. They were crazy. And I said, well, have you sat down in a training conversation or like a family meeting and said, dinner is out of control. Here's the expectation I have of your behavior. And also mommy needs help. So here are 4 jobs. You get to pick. So now there's the freedom within the boundary. The boundary is you're all helping, but you get to pick out of these 4 what you want. And if there's fighting, great. You do these 4 jobs for 2 weeks. Then we can switch jobs. But the point is I'm inviting my kids into the process. I'm asking their opinions while still getting the job done. I'm getting better behavior at dinner. I'm getting them involved. They're setting the table. They're putting out the bread, whatever it is they're doing. We forget that we can involve the kids in the process. And that is respectful communication. And that is how we build cooperation. So that would be my number one secret, is to have these in advance training type conversations and getting the kids buy in.
I love it. Collaboration instead of dictatorship and
Yes.
getting things done as well. I
Mhm.
remember, I used to take my kid to, it was like a daycare while I worked. And when I came one day to pick her up, there were, people who run the place and they were supposed to kind of clean up. And I love the approach, like, how can I help you clean this up? The whole, that phrase, that frame, like, no, go clean up the toys. No, no, not.
Mhm. Mhm.
How can I help you clean up?
That's great. I love this. There's so many creative ways to, again, go through the side door instead of the front door.
Yeah.
So many ways to say, my expectation is that you clean up. But I love the twist on that. It's like, hey, I'm going to help you.
Yeah.
But that's a great example of that. But yes, that's how we structure these communications. And so sometimes if somebody just teaches you how this works, now what? So my goal is to stop react mode and be into prevent mode.
I love that. Prevention is better. Yes,
Yeah.
totally. Your philosophy emphasizes fight-free parenting. What does that actually look like in everyday moments when parent is tired, stressed, and their child is pushing every button?
Fight free. I have a course on fight free, and it's a how to stop yelling course, and I teach within 5 minutes. I have a 5 minute no yell formula, and it is teaching how to do what I've just been talking about, which is how do I take I call it like a yarn ball of chaos. So every day is this yarn ball of chaos. All the strings are all intertwined, and how do I unravel that and parent back here and prevent and have structured communication and expectations. And so I do work with parents to sort of solidify their goals. So we do it one at a time. It's not overwhelming. We just one at a time. What is the most important thing right now that you want to solve? And here's how we can do this. Here's how this will look. And because I started my journey as a yelling parent, I learned how to stop yelling. And so I make my guarantee and my promise that in my course, you will cut your yelling over 90% because these techniques, again, they sidestep the power struggle and they create expectations up front. So that's how it is. So it's a fight-free home. And so many families are just arguing and fighting and they want to win or they want to control. And let's just take a look at the communication style that we have with each other and understand how that's making people react. And let's take accountability for that and understand that there are other ways to communicate and other ways to get things done.
Cool. Totally. I love it. What's one surprising way when you switched from being a yelling parent to a calm kind? What one surprising thing you learned about yourself?
Wow. I couldn't believe how much more in control and um, confident. I think confident is the right word. I felt so empowered when I did this technique with our oldest, who was always making the triplets cry. When I did it, and it worked so flawlessly, and he was accountable, and he owned his behavior, and I didn't have to go and yell. Like, you always do this. Every time you play with the kids, you're crying. You make them cry. It just react. When I was able to sort of really fine tune this technique and see it unfold beautifully before my eyes, wow, I exhaled for the first time and realized there is a better way. There is another way. And why isn't this what we all do? And, I just don't understand why we are all, in this mode of how we were raised. I was yelled at, I was punished, I was grounded. So as a parent, I just went back to that knee-jerk reaction of just this is what happened to me and just do it. I didn't understand that kids needed to be communicated with in a different way. So it's unfortunate that we don't all do this in public schools or in society or other parents. I think if more parents knew that this was something that was possible, they would, be happy to know.
Totally. Thank you. Thank you so much. What do you think is the most important trait to instill in a child?
I get back to accountability, really, because accountability is discipline, it's responsibility, it's honor, it's integrity, because when I'm accountable to my word and my actions, that is everything. Kids need to go, hey, I'm going to meet you at 3. I show up at 3. I'm accountable. I'm accountable for the commitments I make. I'm accountable for the words that I say. I'm accountable for the mistakes that I make. That was a big thing for me. I remember with our oldest, 3 years apart, and I saw him from my window where I was working, him hit his little brother out in the yard, and his little brother was crying, and then they came back to the backyard to back to the get into the house. I looked at my oldest and I said, "Why is he crying?" "I don't know." And I remember, I was so furious because it was like, "That's not accountability. I want you to tell me because I hit him, and now we're gonna have a talk about that." So when he said, "I don't know," and he looked me in the eye and kind of lied about that when I actually saw it happen, that was a crystallizing moment in my parenting where I was like, "Nope, I'm not tolerating a lack of accountability ever from any of you." Like, that was so my oldest was about 5 and the younger ones were maybe 3 or 2, and I remember thinking at that moment, I will not be tolerating a lack of integrity and honesty and accountability to your word. So that was important to me. I would say that is the most important thing.
What did you do in that situation when he told it?
Well, I was still very much learning at that time, but I was proud of myself that I just said, "Why is he crying?" Because before I would have said, "Hey, I saw you hit him." I would have been, like, "What are you doing? What kind of brother?" Like, I would have just blah, blah, blah. And that's how I was parenting. And then it just when I've learned that when you do that and you're frustrated, that it just makes the kid retreat and lie to you more. And now they're like feeling judged and they're feeling like, he's a 5-year-old. He doesn't know why he hit his brother. Like, he hit his brother and made him cry, and that gave him a little bit of power in that moment. But by reacting the way we all react, we're not teaching anything. I'm not teaching him any skills. I'm not teaching him the accountability that was so important for me, for him to have. So I was proud of myself that I was smart enough at the time to say, "Why is he crying?" So that was good enough. But then when he said, "I don't know," I'm like, "I saw you." So I did say, "I saw you." But in most cases, when kids are fighting and sibling fights happen, like, we don't always see what happened. So our temptation is to yell at one or pick the oldest. And the one lesson that I did learn with 4 kids was that if you didn't see it, you put them all in the same boat, they're all in trouble, because that is like, you think the oldest one did it. And I'm telling you, a lot of times it wasn't the oldest one, and you just create more of a rift between the siblings if you think that you know what happened without seeing it. And in fact, the fact when I saw my son hit his brother, that was probably the last time in the history of our lives growing up that I ever saw what actually happened. Most of the time when there's fighting and there's yelling and crying, they come to mom and they want me to take sides or whatever. I teach about how to neutralize that. Like, sibling fights, no, don't get involved, because now there's other ways to get kids to solve their fights. And I teach that as well. But yeah, so that's what I did. I was like, "I saw you." And then, whatever, there was a consequence. He had to go spend time apart or whatever. Yeah, I remember those days well. And like I said, those with the most to learn end up teaching the best because we've been there.
Totally. I love how in that example you actually focused on the outcome, not what happened when, but
Hmm.
there is an event of somebody crying.
Right.
And
Right.
that makes it not personal. It's not like I don't have to defend that. We have an outcome right here. It's obvious.
Yeah. But again, it takes that knowledge up front. Like, this is why I think it's important when I do the coaching, because when I work with people one-on-one, and sometimes all it takes is a few sessions, and you go, "I've trained my mind now to work up front, and now it's more prepared." It's like a prepared parenting where now, like, "Okay, let me take a minute. I know what I'm supposed to say in this case." Because a lot of the reasons why we're reacting is because, again, we're seeing things for the first time, and we are just like, we're just taking the hits. We're working. We've got our adult lives and problems we're trying to solve, and the kids are just a nuisance. They're just fighting and meh. And I think it's important for parents to understand that any attention is good attention for a child. And when we understand that, we won't continue giving them negative attention. We can give positive and, productive attention. But part of what I like to empower parents with is that we teach skills for life. And I think that's missing in a lot of books and parenting and whatever we're doing, anything with kids. I don't think we're focusing on teaching the skill.
I can agree on that. Yes.
Mm.
It's all about kind of the knowledge, like what, I don't know, math and physics and
Mhm.
English, but when it comes to life skills, what you actually need, how do you
Mhm.
handle a tantrum? Or how do you handle a loss, some terrible thing that happened? Those things are not taught, unfortunately.
Well, I think parents now are thinking that they have to absorb all of those feelings for their child and have all the right answers. And I think we're missing that we can turn that back onto the child for them to work through. We don't have to solve that for them. We don't have to make their feelings go away. We don't have to make it better. Sometimes and I talk a lot about these days we're attaching meaning to everything. I have a feeling and that means this. A lot of people are in therapy and I love therapy, but the therapy focuses on your past. And what I like to focus on is the future. So I think both are very needed, but we need to be able to, not attach meaning to everything that's going on and go, okay, well, this just means my feelings. I'm deeply feeling. No, it just is. So let's get through this and move on. We don't have to wallow in feelings about everything. And that's a better lesson for the kids to be able to work through that on their own without my involvement.
I love that. You're so right. Yes. We gotta focus on our future, and the only way we can do that is by being present in the now.
Yes.
What are some habits or mindsets can parents build today to create that long-term connection with their kids, to make it a joyful connection as opposed to
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
yelling and screaming?
I think the number one thing is curiosity. And this is so difficult. I talk a lot about thoughtful detachment. And thoughtful detachment is knowing my place, okay? Knowing what's mine to solve and what's mine to figure out. And it's a very difficult balance for parents to go, okay, in this case, I'm needed. The child needs my advice. They need my wisdom. I am helping solve this for them in this case. And then understand the nuance of when to just allow it to be and let the child work through something. And it's difficult to understand and master, but for the long-term connection, it's most important to be curious and listen and ask questions. We tend to be in problem solve mode as parents, and we all do it. And I still find myself sometimes doing it even with my kids in their 20s. And it's like, okay, they don't need that. They got it. We joke about it. I laugh. I'm like, oh, sorry guys. Like, you got it. And they laugh and whatever. But the long-term connection, as early as whatever, 3, 4, 5, it's a respectful type of style of communication where you respect the child to be able to solve their own concerns and problems to the extent that they're able, and also just being curious and knowing when to step in and potentially solve and when to be curious and ask questions. So I tell parents, like, overall, try to have 50-50. If you find yourself that the child has something going on and you're like, okay, hey, do this, do that, whatever, then tell yourself, okay, the next time I'm just going to ask questions and say, like, how do you think you might solve that? Or that's interesting. What's your thought on that? And, what do you think that might be helpful next time? So I would say sometimes split the difference, because as parents, we do have to help solve. We do have to inject wisdom into our kids. That's what we're here for. We're guides, we're facilitators. But I think that that's one of the things, is really just to be able to back off and know when to correct and when to connect. And when we connect through curiosity and questions, it does create that long-term trust. The other thing that I tell parents is to always be shock proof. Do not react when your kids tell you things. When they trust you with information, do not circle back and, make that a punishment. Don't judge them. So if they tell you something, don't come back later and go, well, if your friend is staying out past their curfew, like, I don't want you hanging out with them. Now I go, oh, I should have never told you that. So to be a trustworthy parent, when they give you information that they trust you with, don't make that a thing. Don't make them punished for telling you a truth ever. And just, never be shocked over what they tell you, because if they think that you can't handle information, that shuts down future communication. So these are all things we do to create that connection in that relationship as early as possible.
I love that. Don't use their truth as a weapon in future conversations. Just
I,
take it for knowledge. in your
With
knowledge bases, you
yeah,
build a library of your kid and who they are and what they love or what they trust you with. Use it
right.
as a knowledge base from which to operate.
Yeah, yeah, and don't punish them for it, and so a lot of times that shuts down communication, and then parents wonder, "Well, why doesn't he trust me with anything?" Well, it's one of those things where you have to earn that, and if you're reacting every time they tell you something like, "What? Like, but that's not okay. You're not going out over there. You're never going to their house again." Like, now I'm like, think about yourself. If somebody reacts like your partner reacts in this way, you're like, "Oh, I can't tell you anything." So parents need to be aware of how they handle information. I mean, does that mean that I'm not inside completely shocked, waiting for them to leave the room and call my husband and be like, "Oh my God, you're not gonna blah, blah," And I'm not reacting, okay? I'm just not showing them that I'm shocked and reacting. Save the reaction because then again, it just makes them feel like I can't trust her or she can't handle what I tell her.
Thank you. I love that.
Yeah.
Is there any book on the subject that you read that you can recommend or a book that inspired your personal journey?
Well, I wrote my own, and I do feel like that's a very helpful book for taking parents from 2 to 20. So, and that is Secrets to Parenting Without Giving a Fuck. But that was the result of me reading a variety of other books. And for parents that have newborns or like young toddlers, what I read was on becoming baby wise, and it's a series of books. It's called Baby Wise, but it's baby wise and toddler wise. And it's very much about getting kids on a schedule, having a routine, but just in the same methodology as what I'm talking about, the accountability, that thoughtful detachment, that kind of pushback of just you solve it. I feel I trust you to solve it. So that, and then a lot of when I studied behavioral psychology, I read like a 1960s psychology book, and it was called Children the Challenge. I'm not recommending that book to people. It's very dry, very dense, very, very much written in the 60s, like leaving your kid in the car when you go shop. Like it's not. But from the Bible of the book that I read, the offshoot was positive discipline. And so there's a lot of positive discipline books out there that pretty much are, somewhat similar to what I talk about. It's the same sort of methodologies. So those were ones that I kind of ingested and read and learned from.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. What is your superpower if you had to pick one?
Mm, Probably my wisdom. I'm intuitive. I'm pretty in touch with my own self-knowing and just um th- it- I don't know, reading situations, intuitiveness, and that transferred down onto the kids. I could read a situation, I could read what was going on. I was very, very good at nuance. And I would say the wisdom, and the kids know now when they write Mother's Day cards or birthday cards to me. I was like, thank you so much for all your advice, for your wisdom, I would say that might be it, because that was always, and I use it also to help inform my husband of for his job. It's kind of a blessing in that just in the family, I am able to provide that type of advice and counsel to everybody in a way that's beneficial for them. So I'd say that might be it.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your wisdom. I
Thank
love
you.
your approach. If people would like to learn more about you, and where can they get your book?
Book is available on Amazon. You can get there from my website as well. My website is askmomparenting.com, and that's also my Instagram and my Facebook. So Ask Mom Parenting, and on YouTube, where I just started my own podcast on parenting.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We'll include everything in episode notes. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Yeah, it's been a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for all your thoughtful questions. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us on Single Parent Success Stories. If this conversation with Sue Donnellan gave you a new perspective on reducing conflict and building trust with your children, please take a moment to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with another parent who needs encouragement today. Your support helps us continue bringing powerful stories and practical tools for single parents navigating life challenges. And remember, parenting isn't about perfection. It's about learning, growing, and building connection one moment at a time.